Okay, now we are going to look at the next section in our chapter, which is the pyramid power, the levels and areas of management. And you see we have a diagram here that you can follow along with. And we talked about the role of management. Peter Drucker's organizational model sees that the manager as a conductor whose role is not to play each instrument but to lead all musicians throughout most effective performances. Now think about that as you follow along in this part of the chapter, because that model contrasts with the traditional pyramid organizational model. The traditional pyramid uh, consists of all kinds of organizations, can be illustrated using a pyramid from top managers, as you see here in our example, from the top managers to the non-managerial personnel at the bottom there. And in our pyramid here, you can see that we have 3 levels of management. We have the top managers, the middle managers, and the first line managers. Now, depending on the size of the organization, your pyramid may be different. The number of levels typically increases as the size of the business grows or the workforce grows. So in a small company, you may only have one level of management, which would be the owner. In a larger corporation, though, you may have multiple levels of management, like with our pyramid here, where top managers, middle managers, and first line managers. Now, while managers at all levels perform the 4 basic functions we just discussed, planning, organizing, leading, and controlling, how they perform those functions may be different. Their roles in the organization and the scope of responsibilities are going to vary. So let's take a look at each of these 3 levels of management. First, look at the top managers here. And you can see by definition that top managers make long-term decisions about the overall direction of the organization and establish the objectives, policies, and strategies for it. And then that information gets filtered down the pyramid. So these top managers are essentially the organization's senior executives. They may have titles like Chief Executive Officer, or also usually hear the term just CEO, or Chief Operating Officer, COO, or President, those type of titles. These executives must be future-oriented, dealing with uncertain, highly competitive conditions to help formalize those objectives and policies and strategies for the future. These managers are at the summit of the management pyramid. So one way you can think of top managers is that they're strategic architects. They establish the broad policies and goals of the organization. Now we'll look at our next level, the middle managers. In terms of the managerial pyramid, like I said, the middle managers are just like that. They are below the top managers and above the first line managers. These managers are responsible for translating the general goals and plans developed by those top managers into more specific objectives and activities as they filter down through the pyramid. They kind of serve as a nerve center of the communication in the organization. They interpret and disseminate the top manager's priorities down and channel that information from the front lines upward. In a medium-sized organization, there may be only one level of middle management. However, in a large organization, there may be multiple layers of this middle management. The key here is that the middle managers supervise other managers rather than non-management employees. And now we'll look at the first line managers. The first line managers are the ones who are directing those daily tasks. They make short-term operating decisions, directing the daily tasks of the non-managerial personnel, those people that we identified at the bottom of that pyramid. Those key employees that are performing the daily tasks that keep the organization running and successful. Now, first-line managers are the lower-level managers who you'll see titles such as team leader, foreman, supervisor, and supervisor is a really good term that you can associate with being a name given to our first-line managers as a whole. And like I said, the role of the frontline manager is critical in an organization because they interact on a daily basis with those employees who actually produce the product or offer the service. And if these managers perform poorly, those employees that report to them may also perform poorly and lack proper motivation, and thus hurting our organization as a whole. Now let's expand that thought into our areas of management. We'll take a look at how functional managers versus a general manager. And you can see by definition that a functional manager is responsible for just one organizational activity. These managers generally supervise employees who have expertise in one area, such as accounting, human resources, finance, information technology, stuff like that. For example, a production manager would supervise those employees who perform activities needed to manufacture the company's products. As far as the general manager, a general manager is responsible for several organizational activities instead of just one like the functional manager. An example of a general manager here would be like an executive vice president who is over several different departments, who might be over, you know, manufacturing, human resources, and sales. They are juggling the responsibilities for several different organizational activities. Okay, let's go ahead and take that information that you just got there with the areas of management and let's apply that. Think about what we just said. Now, Danielle supervises the food assembly line workers. What type of manager is she? Is she a top manager, middle manager, first line manager, or a general manager? Hopefully, based on what we just described, you picked C, because Danielle is a first line manager. Okay, the next part of the chapter went over managers for three types of organizations: for-profit organizations, non-profit organizations, and mutual benefit organizations. In general, you can just look at this as a for-profit organization is just that. It's out there for making money. Non-profit organizations are in existence for offering services. Their purpose is to offer services to some clients, not to make a profit. A commonweal organization offers services to all clients within their jurisdictions. And mutual benefit organizations are for aiding its members. An example of that mutual benefit organization that is primarily exists to benefit the group's members rather than the public as a whole would be a credit unions. Credit unions generally are mutual benefit organizations. Unlike profit-driven financial institutions that are in business to make money for its shareholders, credit unions are operated and owned by their members. Now, while these managers in these different types of organizations will still have those same four management functions to perform, their biggest difference is how the organization measures success, by a profit generated or by service offered. And in the case of a mutual benefit organization, managers in these type of organizations may focus less on the bottom line and more on how they can better serve their members or the community at large. The next part of the chapter deals with roles managers must play successfully. And it starts out talking about a classic study conducted by a renowned academic and management expert, Henry Mintzberg, who looked at how managers spent their time at work and focused on the roles of managers. And you can see the findings from that is that a manager relies more on verbal than on written communication. Most managers back then tended to get information through phone conversations and meetings. Where now, email makes it possible to communicate almost as rapidly in writing as with the spoken word. Another finding was that a manager works long hours at an intense pace. Long hours at work, typically 50 hours per week, are standard for a manager. And depending on the type of organization you're in, it may be even longer, such as in the restaurant industry, where a typical work week may be 60 to 65 hours a week based on the size of the restaurant. And other studies found even longer work weeks when Mintzberg did his study. However, more companies are allowing managers to reduce their work hours and spend more time with family and recognizing that the time away from work is important in keeping a manager rejuvenated. And the third finding is a manager's work is characterized by fragmentation, brevity, and variety. In his findings, Mintzberg found that only about 1/10 of managerial activity took more than an hour to complete. Now, the executive's work time has been characterized as the interrupt-driven day, and you can read more about that in the text. And then Mintzberg also found that time and task management is a major challenge for every manager. Now, even though this study was done many decades ago and focused on top executives, it's still an accurate reflection of what all types of managers do today. Now, Mintzberg concluded that managers play three broad types of roles, or organized sets of behaviors. And we'll look at those roles now. The first one is the interpersonal role. And this is in the interpersonal roles, managers interact with people inside and outside of their work units, such as a figurehead role, which is performing symbolic tasks that represent your organization. There's the leader role, which is being responsible for actions of your subordinates. And then there's the liaison role, which is working with other people outside your work unit and organization. Now, in their information roles, they act as a monitor, disseminator, and a spokesman role. The monitor role is where you're being constantly alert for useful information. You're monitoring everything. The disseminator role is where you're giving important information to employees. You're taking information, you're breaking it down into a way to communicate with them to your employees. And the spokesperson role is being a diplomat. It's putting the best face on the activities of the work or organization. So this spokesperson role, the manager communicates with others on behalf of the organization about plans, policies, actions, and results. So for an example, a regional sales manager may set forth its sales goals for the upcoming quarter along with their plans on how they will achieve those goals. And the third type is the decision roles. And in their decision roles, managers use information to make decisions, to solve problems, or take advantage of available opportunities. And here we have a few different roles. You have the entrepreneur role, which is where the manager is initiating or encouraging changes and innovation in the organization. You have the disturbance handler role, which is where the manager is handling unforeseen problems that might arise. You have the resource allocator. This is where the manager is setting priorities about the use of the available resources. We've talked about those resources earlier on. And the negotiator role, which is working with others inside and outside the organization. Now that you have a little bit of an understanding of the three types of managerial roles, let's apply that to a question here. So you have CEO Gary Kelly sets the direction and strategy for Southwest Airlines. What type of managerial role is he performing? Interpersonal, informational, decisional, or conclusive? And the type of managerial role he is performing obviously is C. He is performing the decisional role. So hopefully you've got that right, and now we'll move on to the next part of our chapter. In this part of the chapter, we're going to be talking about the entrepreneur. Now, we can define entrepreneurship, which is essentially taking risks in pursuit of an available opportunity. So what entrepreneurship is the process of taking risks to create a new enterprise. And you see we have a couple terms here. We have the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. Now most entrepreneurships are created by that person who sees that there is an opportunity. So they take it. They take the risk and they make that forward leap into launching that business. And like I said, there are people, two types of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs who spot, create, and exploit an opportunity, a product or service. And then there is the intrapreneur, or you can think of it as the inside entrepreneur, who is someone who works inside an organization that already exists and sees an opportunity for a product or service that maybe isn't being there yet, and they jump on that and use the organization's resources to get that organization to realize it. hey, here's an opportunity, let's take it. And a really good example of this in the book is where with the 3M Corporation. And with the 3M Corporation, they had a policy that allows employees to spend 15% of their working hours developing new product ideas. One of those ideas that spanned from that was the Post-it notes, which we've all seen for many, many years now. So that was just a great example of entrepreneurship, which was an idea and pursuit that developed from a company that already existed from inside that organization. So how does an entrepreneur and a manager differ? Being an entrepreneur is what it takes to start a business. Being a manager is what it takes to grow or maintain an existing business. Now there are similarities. Entrepreneurs and managers share some critical characteristics, but like I said, there are some significant differences as well. Both have a high need for achievement. Both have strong results orientation, establishing challenging but yet realistic goals, and then set out to achieve those goals. However, managers are typically more motivated by organizational rewards such as promotions, salary increases, various perks such as a own parking spot, let's say, whereas the entrepreneur is usually willing to immerse themselves totally to see that their business succeeds and grows because they may have more invested in that. So let's take that new information and let's apply it towards this question. George thought there was an opportunity and opened a new deli in Irmo. He is a what? A manager, an entrepreneur, or an omnipreneur? Obviously the answer is an entrepreneur because it is a new business. Now we look at the question. To be a terrific manager, what skills should I cultivate? In this part of the chapter, we looked at researcher Robert Katz, who found that managers acquire three principal skills: technical skills, conceptual skills, and human skills. So we'll take a look at those now. And technical skills are just the ability to perform a specific job. Or you can say that these technical skills consist of job-specific knowledge needed to perform within a specialized field. And having technical skills seems to be the most important at the lower levels of management because they don't have to look at the whole perspective of the organization or its future. They have these specific skills that can be applied in this area. Now, conceptual skills are the ability to think analytically, and those conceptual skills consist of the ability to think analytically, visualize, and organize as a whole and understand how all the parts work together to achieve those goals. And these skills are particularly important to those top managers as they are looking at the organization as a whole and seeing where to take it and how to stay competitive in the market. Now we get to the human skills, which is the ability to interact well with people. Not everyone have these necessary human skills. And these consist of the ability to work well in cooperation with other people in order to get things done to achieve those goals of the organization. And these skills are necessary for managers of all levels. And I'm sure you've seen managers in organizations that you've worked for that you're like, this person just does not have very good human skills because they definitely do not work well with other people in their organization, whether it's inside the organization or, and unfortunately, sometimes outside of the organization. Now, developing these skills may be ongoing and it may be a lifelong effort, but as long as you're working to pursue those human skills, that is definitely a skill you need to acquire as to be an exceptional manager. And the better you have those three skills mastered, then the better you are for seeking opportunities for advancement in different managerial roles. So I get the idea of these three skills, but what are the most valuable traits that businesses are looking for in managers? And we'll take a look at those now. And here are those. The ability to motivate and engage others. Makes sense. You have people or subordinates that work for you. You need to be able to motivate them and engage them. You have to be able to communicate. Obviously, you're taking information from other levels and sharing that and disseminating that information to help with motivating and engaging those other individuals. Being global, work experience outside the United States. It's a very valuable trait if you have it. And high energy levels to meet the demands of the global travel and a 24/7 world. Being a global business, travel is going to come up. And not only having that level of energy and being able to get on a plane and go here and meet with this customer or solve this problem, it's also knowing about having that ability to adapt with that culture that you may be getting thrown into. Now, whether you're thinking about a career in management or entrepreneurship, taking all the information from this chapter and all the chapters come can apply to business as well as other facets of your life. So thank you guys and hope you enjoyed chapter 1, and we'll see you in the next chapter.